Today, we're going to talk about the media losing its mind over what one right-wing prosecutor said about Joe Biden. And I have two interviews this week. I'm joined by Senator Chris Murphy, who helped author the border bill, who discusses whether that bill is now dead, if we're still going to see any Ukraine aid, and whether there exists any incentive for even good faith Republicans to seek any compromise with Democrats. And I'm joined by the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, to discuss his thoughts on Republicans' unwillingness to actually do anything and some major progressive priorities in PA, like legal weed and raising the minimum wage. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So as you may or may not know, Joe Biden was being investigated by a special prosecutor for his own mishandling of classified documents during his time as vice president. And we've covered this extensively, but for those who'd like nothing more than to equate Joe Biden and Donald Trump, the issue wasn't so much whether they retained classified documents as it was Trump's unwillingness to give those documents back. He was asked by the National Archives and he refused, then he was subpoenaed and again he refused, and finally a federal magistrate approved a search warrant which led to that warrant being executed at Mar-a-Lago. Biden, on the other hand, just complied. But still, in apparent fairness, Merrick Garland named Robert Hur as a special prosecutor to investigate Joe Biden and to determine whether or not to press charges. This week, Hur opted not to charge Biden, stating that there wouldn't be enough evidence to actually convict the guy in front of a jury, but not before also adding that Joe Biden presented as a, quote, elderly man with a poor memory. And so even though Biden was not charged, Hur still found a way to make the report just as damaging to him, if not legally, then politically. Here's what another prosecutor, now the vice president, had to say.
So the way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated, gratuitous. And so I will say that when it comes to the role and responsibility of a prosecutor in a situation like that, we should expect that there would be a higher level of integrity than what we saw.
Obama administration Attorney General Eric Holder echoed those sentiments. He said, Special Counsel Hur report on Biden classified document issues contains way too much gratuitous remarks and is flatly inconsistent with longstanding DOJ traditions. Had this report been subject to a normal DOJ review, these remarks would undoubtedly have been excised. Now, I want to be clear about who this guy is. Robert Hur is a Trump-appointed Republican prosecutor. He clerked for the staunch conservative Supreme Court Justice William Rehnquist. He clerked for another far-right judge who wrote in support of Donald Trump's Muslim ban. The guy has donated to at least 3 Republican political campaigns. And so the notion that Merrick Garland would find an avowed Republican to handle an investigation into a Democratic president during an election year, no less, just defies logic. Here's the Democrats' problem. We are under the impression that we're going to win over Republicans with displays of goodwill, like here, putting a right-winger in charge of an investigation into Joe Biden. Democrats gain nothing by empowering partisan Republicans because, first of all, on the off chance that a Republican sides with the Democrats, then the rest of the Republican Party is just going to write them off as rhinos or even Democrats themselves. And on the very likely occasion that the Republican doesn't side with the Democrats, then it's immediately weaponized, which was the case here. So we need to get off this obsession with seeking acceptance by Republicans. Like, Merrick Garland is so desperate to not be viewed as political that he's empowering people who are more than happy to be political. Like, he dropped the ball on prosecuting Donald Trump because he was too afraid of the optics. He dropped the ball on prosecuting Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino because, again, he was too afraid of the optics. And now he allowed a Republican prosecutor to investigate the Democratic president, and lo and behold, that guy used his role to launch a political hit job on him during an election year. It is weakness personified. And Democrats need to learn that you get no points for these useless gestures of goodwill that A, don't get reciprocated, B, don't get you any points, and C, backfire on you over and over and over again. The Democrats and the Republicans are playing two different games. Democrats treat Republicans like equal partners in democracy, while Republicans deny the rights of Democrats to even exist. But we refuse to see it even when they are banging us over the head with it. Like, for example, how just recently Republicans demanded a conservative border bill because they said that's the only way they would pass foreign aid. And the Democrats played ball, and then immediately Republicans balked because they didn't want to lose a potent issue to hurt Democrats with in November. Do you not see the inequity here? Democrats want to govern, and Republicans want to seize power. Which, by the way, is not to say that Democrats shouldn't govern. It's to say that we also have to recognize that they're not operating in good faith, and to treat them like they're not operating in good faith, and to message like they're not operating in good faith. because every free pass they get is an invitation for them to do it again and again and again. This Biden report is an unforced error by Merrick Garland, something that we should have expected and a weapon that we should never have handed to the Republicans. And with that said, one final point on this, and this is a point that I've made before, and it's a point I'll continue to make as long as I need to. If you are wondering whether Joe Biden's memory would stop him from serving as an effective president, all you have to do is look at the job that he is literally already doing as president. He's presided over the addition of almost 15 million jobs and 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 23 straight months of sub 4% unemployment, surging consumer sentiment, wages are outpacing inflation, you have the American Rescue Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, the PACT Act, the Infrastructure Law, the Gun Safety Law, the Violence Against Women Act. He codified marriage equality into federal law. He lowered healthcare costs. He canceled $136 billion in student loan debt for 3.7 million borrowers. He bolstered NATO, and he presided over electoral wins in 2020, 2022, and 2023. It is hard to claim that Joe Biden might not be up for a job that he is currently excelling at. And it's probably worth noting that, notwithstanding Biden's stellar performance, his likely opponent, Donald Trump, just blamed Nikki Haley for the events of January 6th and claimed that World War II hasn't happened yet, and learned that U.S. for United States also spells the word us. Like, I'm no expert on senility, but I think the story here is pretty clear. Next up are previews from my interviews with Chris Murphy and Josh Shapiro. Well, to that exact point, Republicans have now rejected bipartisan border bills in 2006, 2014, 2018, and now in 2024. So is this just going to continue to persist? Are they going to continue to do everything they can to just preserve this as an issue, even if it's nakedly apparent to the whole world?
Well, that's the wild thing, is that everybody sees what happened here, right? This was a bipartisan bill that Republicans demanded. Last fall, Republicans said, we will not vote for Ukraine aid unless you come up with a bipartisan border bill. And we're going to tell you who to negotiate the bill with. James Lankford, very conservative Republican from Oklahoma. He's going to drive a hard bargain. He did drive a hard bargain. Mitch McConnell came to the room. He was part of the negotiations. So we announced last weekend a bipartisan border bill that was negotiated by James Lankford, hardline conservative Republican, and Mitch McConnell, and no Republican would support it. Everybody knows what's happening here. Donald Trump came out against the bill. Donald Trump said, I can't imagine winning this election if the border isn't a mess, and so keep the border a mess because it helps me. I actually think this flips the politics of the border. I think this probably was going to be a tough issue for Democrats. I think it's a much less tough issue now because we have a bipartisan bill that would have controlled the border. Republicans are against it only because they actually don't want to fix the problem, and they kind of admitted it in front of everybody.
Does it kind of hurt them doubly in the sense that because these are the same people who have said that this issue is so urgent, the border is so dangerous, there's drugs and rapists and fentanyl and everything coming across, and so this is the number one issue we should focus on, the fact that they're now preserving the status quo doesn't, I mean, to your exact point, is that what you and Democrats intend to harp on moving toward November?
Yeah, all of a sudden, Democrats are the party that are serious about fixing the border, right? We came up with a bill to give the president tough new authority to be able to temporarily slow down the number of people who cross. We came up with a bill to shorten the asylum approval process from 10 years, which is way too long to get an asylum claim processed and allows a lot of people to game the system, down to 6 months. Democrats are the party that want to fix the border. Republicans are the party that reject those ideas and are very happy with the border staying open. So listen, I'm counseling my Democratic colleagues, those that are on the ballot, including the president, to go on offense on the issue of the border and immigration. Of course, we're a pro-immigration party. We still believe that you need to keep legal pathways open to come to this country. But we also believe that there should be law and order on the border. We're the only party that seems to be willing to vote for a bill that does that.
So can you speak on the idea of the Republicans preserving issues because they would rather run on them ahead of the election than actually solving them?
Yeah, it's absolutely shameful. I think if you ask anybody, Democrat and Republican alike, we need comprehensive immigration reform. We need a pathway to citizenship. We need to make sure our dreamers are protected. And we need a secure border. And we have to do all of this in a thoughtful, humane way. Now, I'm not familiar with all the ins and outs of the bill, but what seemed obvious to me was that it had some kind of bipartisan support in Congress until Donald Trump decided to do what he always does, which is put himself first instead of the country and create more chaos for us. I mean, this really is indicative of how he goes about his daily grind, which is, let me figure out what's best for Donald Trump and screw everybody else in the process. And what is really scary, which should scare the hell out of most people, is that he's now got this legion of followers who are quite willing to vote against their own interests in support of him and creating more chaos in our country. And to take a serious issue like immigration reform, which we need, which, let's be real, Democrats and Republicans alike have failed to get done over a lot of years. And the fact that we were at the 1 yard line and then they wouldn't run the ball in because Donald Trump said no, tells you all you need to know about the modern day National Republican Party. It is scary. What we don't need is more chaos in our country. And that's exactly what Donald Trump is bringing.
And this is a pattern, by the way. I mean, just a few days earlier than that, he also came out and said that he hopes the economy crashes before he takes office. So he constantly wants to see all of the priorities, the professed priorities of his own party fail because he thinks it would redound to his benefit, electorally speaking.
Yeah, and let me give you a concrete example from Pennsylvania. He claims to be this great voice of the middle class. I think his words, not mine, that he's their champion. One of the first things he says he wants to do, and look, for all of his BS, what we've learned is you got to take him at his word because he actually does try to do the things that he says he's going to do. The first thing he wants to do is get rid of Obamacare. That would mean that 1.2 million Pennsylvanians, primarily middle-class Pennsylvanians, would be thrown off healthcare coverage. Think about the chaos that would bring to their families. But you see, he wants the political issue for himself. He wants to inject more chaos into the conversation. And so screw all the people that get in his way. That is what he does every single day. It's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, though, he did promise a great healthcare plan. I think it was 2 weeks. I think we'll get it in about 2 weeks from now. Okay, so let's move over to... To watch the full interviews with both Chris Murphy and Josh Shapiro, click the thumbnails right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also click the link on the screen to listen to the audio version of this episode, and of course to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.